Mateen, you've told me before that in the last 40 years, more Muslims have come to faith in Christ than at any other time since Islam was formed in 632 AD. You want to share with us one of those stories of recent conversions?
Sure. Most recently, at the end of December of 2012, I met a young man from northern Oklahoma who, as a Muslim, had been a practicing believer of Islam for years and years, born and raised in Syria, but had serious questions about Islam and had learned something about Jesus that was really compelling to him. He came and visited with me. We had lunch together and spent about 3 hours talking about who Jesus is. About a week later, I got a phone call from him saying that he had become a follower of Jesus and that he had decided that he wanted to be baptized before going back over to Syria. He was going to Syria to pick up his fiancée and was afraid that he might end up, at worst, being killed there, and so he wanted to make sure he was baptized before he left. Word got out to the Muslim community in the city that he lived in that he had been baptized and become a Christian. His father is an imam in Texas. And when my friend went over to Syria to pick up his fiancée and to marry her, to try to bring her back to the States, the father called his relatives in Damascus and said, "If you see my son there in Syria, you kill him." And indeed, they did see him because he himself did not yet know that word had gotten out that he'd become a Christian. And he went to visit one of his uncles. The uncle invited him into the house. When he was inside the house, the uncle and two other uncles and a cousin pounced on him. He was stabbed in the back and side 4 times, was able to escape and get medical attention. He had to leave his wife in Damascus and come back to the U.S. He met with me. I saw the wounds, stitches in his back and side. But he was so concerned, of course, about his wife that within a week he went back to Syria to try to get her out of Syria. He has done that, but they're still waiting for a visa for his wife to get back into the States. But Charles, I tell you the story because I want you to understand how compelling the Jesus of the Gospels is to human beings, particularly Muslims who for so long have been immersed in a system that says you have to work as hard as you can to try to please God, but you never know whether you've done enough to make God happy. And to learn of a God who has given himself to this world. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. To discover a God who is willing to give you salvation if you put your trust in him, compared to a God who is always looking down at you with crossed arms, tapping his foot, saying, I'm not telling you whether you've made the grade yet or not, is such a huge difference that this young man was willing to die. Even though he'd been a Christian less than 6 weeks, he'd been attacked twice and been knifed 2 different times, and yet has not been willing to give up his newfound faith in Christ. We had this young man in our church a few weeks ago. I took him down to a Sunday school class that had been praying for him. They saw him again, and we shared about what he had gone through, and the class leader said, "Please come and sit here in the center of the class. We want to gather around you and pray." And they did. They gathered around and laid hands on him. And at the end, he was in tears, and he said he thanked them profusely and then said to them, "This would never happen in a mosque. People don't pray like this for one another in the mosque." The life of a new Christian immersed in the family of God, suffused with the love of Jesus Christ, is an experience that Muslims just don't know about until they experience it in reality, in coming to Christ and coming in the midst of his people. And Muslims around the world are discovering that in droves. And that's why the Christian mission to the Muslim world is the frontier, I believe, that God has opened up for the remainder of this century, unless he comes before then.